Hello, I'm Catalina Maria Johnson. On behalf of Gozamos and Beach Latino, I'm going to be spending some time with Hector Perez, finding out all about Electro Jarocho, and that's his Grammy-nominated album. So, Hector, tell us a little bit, just tell me a little bit about, I know you were born in LA, where were your parents from? And just tell me a little bit about how you just kind of started in the whole the music industry, and then what brought you to different genres, including son jarocho.
Well, hey, yes, thanks for doing this interview. Yeah, was born and raised in LA. My parents are from Jalisco, from a small town in Jalisco called Tecolotlan, and they came
Wow.
here in the 60s. They immigrated here straight to East LA, and then they moved to where they live now, where I was born, and that's the southern part of LA. And my dad is a musician, but he had a conjunto band, and with him and his
Wow.
brother, and their drummer left to Mexico, and at 8 years old he sat me down in the drums to play cumbias and rancheras,
Uh-huh.
and that's how I started. So on the weekends we'd play quinceañeras and bodas for about a good 10 years. And then in the weekends, I'd be listening to what other Chicanos in LA were listening to, just hip hop or whatever else was on the radio. I was
Mhm.
really into hip hop, and then the way that eventually progressed to me celebrating son jarocho, it happened many years later after college. After I got married, I was listening to a record by Los Lobos, and they played this song La Guacamaya,
Mhm.
that it really resonated something within me, and I just went on this long quest for finding out what those instruments were. I'd heard some of that music as a kid, but my experience was gravitating towards a lot more of the American experience with hip hop and pop. And even though I had a heavy influence from my parents in northern Mexican music, norteñas, cumbias, anything that had to do by Los Caminantes, Los Bukis, Los Tigres del Norte, all that stuff. As it was,
Mhm.
so somehow this had, I don't know what, I didn't know at the time what it was, but it resonated. And I later on found out that in son jarocho, there's a lot of elements that share those same experience, that contain the same elements that I experienced as a kid, and that was like it's the free form style of improvisational lyrics are a lot like hip hop and freestyle hip hop. A
Mhm.
lot of the content of the lyrics were either socially conscious like hip hop, or
Mhm.
were observational, kind of comically observational, like cumbias. And so there was just a menudo there of elements that rightfully hit me in places that we don't often think about, like these things that might trigger nostalgic feelings. But that's really what's how I got into son jarocho.
Wow, wow. And then somehow you started becoming involved with both the very traditional side with Los Cojolites, which is interesting, just fascinating, and then the kind of taking son jarocho to probably where it's never been before, which is somewhere, you know, uh, in the electronic, dance club world. So how did that happen?
Well, that was a bit of a journey. And as this is a common story with a lot of these kinds of records. I guess you don't sit down and say, I'm going to write a record, and this is exactly how it's going to be, and this is what we're going to do after we're done. This happened really organically. It
Mm.
started when I was asked to produce an album and mix it for Maldita Vecindad, the Mexican rock legends out of
Right,
Mexico City.
their last album, in fact, I think, right?
Yeah, that there was their what turned out to be that we didn't plan on it being the final album, but it ended up being they were on hiatus for 15 years or so, or 12 or 15 years
Mhm.
without a record, and this was the big one. And so they had some challenges at the beginning, and then they brought me in to try to unlock this monumental project. and uh, and so I had been writing music. My background since since I'm now in San Francisco, since I came from LA, is I have about close to 20 years writing music for really highly polished music for TV commercials for Apple, 7 Up, Coca-Cola, Nike, Reebok, Adidas. I've done hundreds and hundreds of ads for national campaigns. And so they brought me in to see if my highly honed in production skills can lend some kind of asset to this album. And Greg Landau, a friend of mine, was the one assigned to produce it, and so he called me to help him produce and mix that. And so yeah, I went. I utilized the studio a little differently than others do, and I use the instrument like a giant. I mean, the studio like a giant musical instrument because I'm a composer, and I produce and mix, but really. Primarily, I'm a composer, so if you're going to ask me to mix your record, I'm going to get in there and change the mechanics, rearrange, recompose, add intros. Long story short, they had one song on there that Maldita Vecindad invited Los Cojolites to play on one song.
Wow.
And so that was a big challenge. There was a lot of failures there to try to make this this Mexican ska punk rock band gel with this really organic, clean, folkloric style. It was really hard, and I found an element that bridged the two, and that was electronics.
Wow.
And that was actually one of my favorite pieces. That song is called Chacagua on the record Circular Colectivo. And really that was the seed that planted the rest of the craziness. From there, Greg asked me to help produce and mix Los Cojolites record, which was an organic record. And then we decided, what if we take one of their songs and we remix it, and then we put it on the album as a bonus track. But so that was the original intention, but I had a bit of a problem conceptually with that. And also it was a little tricky to try to do it in that direction, taking a song and then remixing it. It was really tricky. So I thought, being a composer, it's easier for me to just write a new song or a new version of a song. So I wrote a new version of El Cascabel. And then so that's actually the lead track of the record. That was the first song before even Sistema Bomb existed. That was the first song, and I brought him into the studio. They recorded over sections of it, and that's what you find on the record. That's the manifestation of that. Later on, I decided to do more of those. I was so hooked. I said, you know what? I on that song, by the way, I called in a friend of mine from LA, from Ozomatli, Asdru Sierra. He's the trumpet player and lead singer of Ozomatli. And so I said, hey, can you replace my voice? Because, although I consider myself pretty good producer, composer, I'm not a vocalist. And so he was like, great. He dug it. And then that fusion there was actually the birth of the formula for Sistema Bomb, meaning the pairings that I would have between a traditional son jarocho master and a non-traditional Latino musician who has celebrated son jarocho in their own way. And so that it became the formula. Then I paired Rocco Pachucote with Licho Ceguera, then Hector Guerra with Patricio Hidalgo, and then just on and on and on. And that's really how the whole thing happened.
Each track has a pairing in the Sistema Bomb album?
Not necessarily. There are some where pairings were I tried on every one, and this is the nature of composing and writing. You predict something's going to happen, and then it changes on the fly. And some pairings worked and some of them didn't, but the way that they exist on the record is the perfect way to me that they should exist. And the ones that have pairings are superb. And then the other ones where it made more sense to feature the composer or the writer or the artist as a solo thing, then that worked. And the pairings are more in the sense of their electronic and modern elements with this incredibly rich, organic, folkloric music. Yes.
Now tell me, at the beginning of precisely El Cascabel, there's the phrase, somebody's kind of speaking it, or it's an anthem. It says, El son jarocho es la bandera de un pueblo que camina. I love that. Now where does that come from?
That that was Joel from Los Cojolites, and that is really that's their sentiment, that this is the flag of un pueblo. La bandera de un pueblo es el son jarocho. And it's their way of connecting to their past, to their ancestors, to the people who helped develop this. I mean, I've said that son jarocho to Veracruz is like jazz to New Orleans, or New Orleans to jazz, because this is music that was born in the streets and in taverns of a port city.
Yeah, it
And
was
so
denounced to the Inquisition
that's
in like
right.
1776 for being the, la música de mulatos y gente de color quebrada, and
Claro que
inciting dangerous thoughts.
yes,
Lewd,
so that
dangerous
that
thoughts.
was their way of, that's another way of them acknowledging where this music came from, and they are very respectful of its origins.
Mhm.
And it's a really unique genre. Honestly, I mean, I find it fascinating. I find it really impressive that the people there, or a lot of the people who are playing it, are really trying really hard to interpret it correctly, but also to teach new generations of musicians how to perform it, how to play it. I think that's really great, that Mexico has this genre like that. That's very well respected, really protected from over commercialization. I
Mhm.
was really cautious with this record. I have to tell you,
Mhm.
because of that
Mhm.
concept, I would not, and then this is true, I would not have put this record out had they had I got any kind of a protest
Mhm.
from anyone over there. It
I
was
was going
really
to ask you if the purists had protested, but you're saying
they
no.
I honestly, although I did have a little bit of pushback, most of the musicians treated this with such open minds, because they recognize that, number one, I was trying to do it really respectfully. I was using the actual composers as the singers. I wasn't just taking their music and then
Mhm.
manipulating it with
Mhm.
samplers. I,
Right.
I actually had them here. They came into the
Mm.
studio and sang it
Cool,
here.
cool, cool, cool.
And so, but I did have a little bit of pushback, but it was more of a debate and dialogue versus, resistance,
Yeah.
and
Tell
even
me
those,
about the. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, even those who resisted are on the record.
Well,
Eventually
that's
we came to a
won him
good,
over.
we're at a good balance between,
Uh-huh.
and that was key. If you listen to the songs, the reason why this sounds like a new genre is because it's not weighted toward the electronic, nor is it weighted toward the folkloric. It's writing
Mhm.
a good balance, and everyone recognized that they heard el corazón de cada canción en son jarocho,
Right.
and so yeah.
So that's praise from the highest source if they joined in for sure. So Hector, you've got, and we can see it in the background, the Sistema Bone graphics, which I love. La
Oh, the
cabecita, la
la
bomba
máscara.
here. So tell me where that came from.
This is the
That's so
máscara.
cool.
And let's
I
put
love that.
so this is the
Look at that.
Sistema Bomb hat. So that actually I put it on.
I
But and the reason, well, let me put that back. That kind of is, it was number one, that was made. I have a cousin who lives in New York, and
Mhm.
he's a set designer for Broadway shows, and I mean,
Talented. Wow.
yeah,
Yeah.
Carlos Aguilar, he's the man. Anyway, uh, the mask, number one, the image came first before the mask, and they both have a bit of a story. The image
Mhm.
is, when I was trying to figure out what am I going to call, or what are we going to call this, because I had all the body of work, the music done well before I
Mhm.
figured out what I was going to do with it. And
Mhm.
so it really came, this is an abstract project. It's not a real band. It's a sort of
A
an ethereal.
concept, really.
It's a concept. It's a collective that exists in the ether, and
Mhm.
so
Mhm.
I thought, this is some kind of, like a system of people. So I thought sistema was a good way to qualify that. Besides, it has, electronic and
Mhm.
technological
Sure.
sentiments in the word system and sistema. And then the when I took a step back and heard all the tracks back to back, I thought they all had this bombastic quality about it. And not only that, but they all had a really socially conscious message. So we
Mhm.
thought, so that's when I thought, where Sistema Bomb came from, but it actually came before the name was. I liked the old 1940s cartoons. There was an image that my wife had shared with me of this guy that got so frustrated by his surroundings, and he was turning red. It was a cartoon. It was turning red, red,
Mhm.
and finally his head just turned into a bomb, like those old round bombs with the
Right.
fuse that comes out of it.
Right.
And
Right.
then so that's kind of what sparked the Sistema Bomb, was this sense of, like, these lyrics are constantly, they're the youth, the people on the streets who are observing their political surroundings, and sometimes
Mhm.
that can come to a heated, situation, or just
Right.
internal frustration, and a lot of times that comes out in a song, right?
Right.
A really productive way of letting out some frustration. And so
Right.
that's where I decided to adopt that image of the bomb head. Um,
Mhm.
and then the reason why I had a mask made out of it was because
Mhm.
my intention originally was not to celebrate me, because the nature of these things are, they're gonna find who's behind this, who's the,
Mhm.
I this is a, I have to say this really humbly, but in my tiny 0.0001% contribution to this genre, I wanted to make sure that that was always focused on the musicians from Veracruz: Patricio Hidalgo, Licho Ceguera, Ramon Gutierrez, Los Cojolites, Andres Flores, that those guys are the ones who got celebrated. So my idea was that I would always have the mask on as the anonymous man
Mhm.
behind the curtain, and then they'll always be up front and singing and doing that, and so that was the idea behind the mask. Now there was some logistical problems with that,
Mhm.
because it's hard to hear with the mask on, and at times the screen, even though the eyes are a mesh, so I can see through the eye portion, sometimes the with the monitors are so small that I can't wear my glasses with the mask. Ando ciego without them. So there's some we're working that stuff out, but that was the idea.
Huh. Now, how are you organizing this all live? In other words, since it is a collective and you've brought different masters from, the traditional and more contemporary worlds together, how are you organizing your live concerts?
Oh
And what
boy.
configuration of musicians are you using? How are you putting that together?
Yeah, and that is still, you're right at the beginning of this explosion.
Because
So
we
I,
want
I
you to
don't
come to Chicago.
yeah, I don't really have a great answer for you there, because I've played it a couple times, and each time has been very different and very challenging.
Yeah.
We've just got invited to play at Cumbre Tajín in Veracruz.
Oh, wow. Good
You
for
might have
you.
seen it. Yes, we are on the Saturday the 23rd on the same stage with Smashing Pumpkins, Blind
Wow.
Melon, also Motley. This is incredible. This is the way Sistema Bomb. There's something bizarre happening that we did not plan. This had none backing at all. This was all self-produced. All of
Uh-huh.
a sudden we get the Grammy nomination. Now we got invited to Cumbre Tajín, and so this is actually a source of and I'm being truthful and as honest as I can. It's been a little bit of a source of stress for me, because
Mm.
I'm a composer. I'm in the studio. You see me here. This is my lair behind me. This is where I live. I'm a creature from the caves of this San Francisco studio. And so to pull me out of here and put me in front of a bunch of people is a challenge,
Right.
and
Right.
I'm a perfectionist by nature, so that causes a bit more of an issue. Um, but the way that I've done it is that it's very key, and I will not do any show without jarocho players. This is not
Mm.
about me and a laptop. This is about
Mm.
son jarocho performers. And so those
Mm.
shows that I've done, I've gotten a bass player and guitarist to help me do some of the backing tracks. I play
Mm.
a lot of the tracks on the laptop because it's now an accepted practice. Before you would hide the laptop behind some black veil. Now everyone puts a spotlight on and it's cool, so
Right.
that's fine. But then I've performed it with at least 1 to 2 jarocho players. The thing that's going to be special about Tajín, because
Mm.
it is such a huge deal last year there were 500,000 people that went through that festival.
Wow.
It's such a huge deal that it's the first time, and I don't know if the only time, where all the participants in the Sistema Bomb album will be there.
Oh,
We have
wow.
Patricio, Hidalgo, Licho Ceguera, Ramon Gutierrez, Los Cojolites, or I should say Andres Flores, Los Cojolites, and I'm going to have Asdru from Ozomatli,
Oh, wow,
and
wow. How great is
um,
that?
Mario Ozomatli's drummer is going to be laying down beats for us, and Federico Zuniga, bass player, is going to come from LA. So it's going to be a massive ejército. Plus, we're going to have some special surprises for the audience. A lot of really cool technological special things we'll have for them. But Sistema Bomb cannot perform at small bars or venues like that. We're just
Right,
it's not that kind of this. Unfortunately, locks us into having to do these big productions because
right,
it,
right.
you know and in the sense we will, since this is not a gigging band, we don't mind being left out of a lot of gigs, but in a way
Mhm.
we can get to sort of fast forward and jump ahead at times and go straight to the bigger things, as long as people understand, booking agents understand that this is the nature of Sistema Bomb. As long as they like the music, we'll try to do it, but it is a bit stressful for me
Right. And now where to
because
next? Are you planning another album already? Is that in the works?
yeah. Well, funny you mentioned that. Tomorrow, I released the first single from volume number two. It's called La Caña, and I've already shared it a bunch, but tomorrow becomes its official iTunes release. And so that song is a song written by Patricio Hidalgo. It features
Mhm.
Patricio and Ramon Gutierrez and Hector Guerra, this amazing Spanish Bolivian hip hop rapper who's really hitting
Wow.
hard right now. He's got a new record called Amor, and
Mhm.
I produced 3 songs on that record. Wrote one of those 3 for him, and
Cool,
so
cool.
he's featured on this song as an incredible young artist, super professional. He's one of the, I mean, for a hip hop artist, this guy is unusually professional and on time. When he says he's going to be there at 9, he's there at 8:30. Um, and so that features him, and that we have a couple surprises coming up with that song, which we'll announce later on the Sistema Bomb Facebook page and Twitter feeds.
Great.
But yeah,
Cool.
that's the beginning of the second album, and I did this experiment like a couple weeks ago where I asked the Facebook fans. I said, "What song would you guys like to see me remix or do a new interpretation of?" And I got a ton of replies. And the song that won was called La Gallina. Now,
La gallina.
La Gallina, and it happens to
Mhm.
be written by Patricio Hidalgo.
Oh, cool,
And
cool,
to
cool.
top it all off, I happen to have recorded that already for an album I'm working on for Patricio. So I on the spot just remixed it for I mean, I did it in a couple hours just to give him an idea, just to be an interactive. And I love that method. So I put it up on SoundCloud, and so you guys can go here on SoundCloud.com/Sistema hyphen bomb, or you can go to my Facebook page,
Uh-huh.
and you
Mhm.
can see this interactive manifestation of this song. And so I'm thinking the rest of the album I'm going to do the same. Call out a song, I'll
Uh-huh.
do it.
Luna negra, luna negra.
Yeah, Luna Negra is a good one. And that would be perfect because Los Cojolites and my
Yes.
relationship with those guys. And things like that. Then I'll do a quick remix just so that you can see it. That maybe the next day, we'll vote on it one day. The next day,
Uh-huh.
you'll hear
Uh-huh.
my version of it. But then it'll take me a couple months to actually do it correctly, and then it'll be But at least you get the sense
The taste
of
of it.
like everyone's part of this, because I had this campaign started a long time ago that Todos Somos Sistema Bomb.
Mhm.
And so, it really is all of us celebrating this genre in our, mostly it's going to be through my lens, but as long as people are liking these kinds of interpretations, it can be considered like through all of our
Mhm.
lenses.
Well, one last question, Hector. This is something I ask all musicians. I mean, music, I think, has a particular power as an art form that um, it's not that it's better than other art forms like painting. I mean, everything's very important to humanity, but I think music on some level is really central to humanity. And you see it with something like this son jarocho that lasts for centuries, speaks to people. I mean, really, really, really expresses uh, what people want to express and touches them. So, what do you think it is about music, and I guess in your case particularly, son jarocho, as you explore it, that has this particular power to reach and to touch and to change, really, to transform?
Well, that's a really good, interesting question that invites you to be really introspective. And I tell you, for me, now, I guess I'm on my, it's 32nd year of doing music. Since I started so early with my dad, I can say that there's, I would say, two main reasons. One of them is that music, unlike any other art form, and I'm thinking mostly the visual art forms, is very physical. And that is that the way it even, and this is now getting a little geeky, scientific, but the way that we interpret music is through physical contact, right? I mean, these are actually sound waves that are hitting our eardrums and resonating us. And then some of the frequencies and parts of the music actually resonate your physical body. We think all the sound comes in through here, but it doesn't. A lot of the sound comes straight through the chest plate because of the low end, and the speakers are resonating your physical being. So that's one way in that it's very different. It's very visceral because of that, right? We literally interpret it in the physical world. And then I think the second thing, which is almost more important than that to me, but supportive, and that is that that music invites the use of imagination. Unlike visuals, where with visuals, depending on what kind of art it is, if it's abstract art or if it's impressionism, then there's different ways that you can interpret what you're looking at. Sometimes you have to extract symbols from what you see, and sometimes it's telling you what to see, right? Whereas with music, you're invited to use your imagination at all times, and that causes different things in different people. For some people, it causes this resurgence of memories, and for other people, it just causes simple triggers and releasing of endorphins, right? Just really good feelings about something you might not know why. So I think those are the two main reasons why music stands out, is because of this physical, visceral nature of it, and then because it invites you to use the most powerful tool that humans have, and that is the imagination. And then so Son Jarocho, to me, triggered both of those things. One of them was, like I said earlier, this mystical connection to me, to my youth, to things that something resonated in me. It's very infectious music. If you take out any cultural specific experiences, the music itself is very pop friendly, because it uses simple chords. It has really great African rhythms in it. The content of the lyrics are really infectious. They're really simple, call and response. They have to do it that way, so that, because this is music that's born of the fandangos amongst people who are not studied musicians. So it was developed in its basic, most nectar of the human experience was, what's the simplest thing we can do to resonate everyone who is not a musician, and that's how the music was born. And so that's a really good example for how this music entered and resonated within me, based on both the physical elements of the music itself, with the leona, when it's resonating your skin with that low end, you can't help but feeling it. Plus the tamborazos of the tarima when they're zapateando, that's just it's hard not to feel that. And then of course it just fills you with like, wow, this song to me sounds really nostalgic, this song to me sounds really energetic, this reminds me of this in my childhood, or that just reminds me of that song I heard over there, so I would say that would be my answer to that.
Wow. Well, thank you so much for your time, Hector. It's been great chatting with you, and congratulations on the Grammy nomination. That's outstanding. Crossing our fingers for you. In a few days, we'll find out the results, and look forward to catching up with you again in the future.
Thank you, and thanks for doing this, Catalina. Really appreciate it.
Take care, Hector. Bye-bye.
Okay, you too. Bye.
I hope you enjoyed the time with Hector Perez. You can find out more about Sistema BOM at beatlatino.com. gozamos.com, and also Sistema BOM is on Facebook and they have their own webpage, sistemabom.com. I'm Catalina Maria Johnson on behalf of Beat Latino and Gozamos.